how do we know which layers of abstraction is like, we need 1,000 ideas to flourish, and how do we know like,
Right.
hey, one good idea, we can all collaborate, let's team up? Where do we draw those
Yeah.
lines? It seems to me like a very difficult thing to decide.
It is an extremely hard problem. It is a distributed problem. I have this terrible habit of throwing myself at distributed problems. For some reason, Google seems to be willing to keep me on staff, partly, partly to do that.
Yeah.
And so, like I mentioned, I was making the rounds looking at everybody's export maps
Right.
implementations. Rollup just landed it. I think Lars from the modern web server implemented it in Rollup. Yay. But part of the reason why I'm doing that, and this is not to say that I'm the most objective person to be doing this, but I'm hoping that I can go and sort of do the survey, write the doc that kind of gives the lay of the land, publish that, and then whether or not WMR is the right implementation from which to derive the common implementation, I will have one place that summarizes all of the current implementations.
Mm-hmm.
I think the difficulty is always with the thing you said, which is like, okay, export maps is an easy one because that's a spec. It's something that Node put
Right.
there. So obviously there's value in a shared implementation of a spec in a reference implementation, essentially. And bundlers aren't necessarily able to use Node's implementation because it is not independent of Node, so it's not technically a pure reference implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to disparage it, but it's just it
Factual.
fits their need. Yeah.
Right.
The other things are hairier. So we wrote that custom AST transformer that is largely Babel compatible. What do we do with that? Right? Like, is that a WMR thing? We literally built it to optimize WMR's performance while still supporting Babel plugins. But like, does the community need a potentially lighter weight Babel alternative? Not sure about that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
My default answer would be no. That's actually something we don't need or potentially don't want. Yeah, that gets tricky, and all these things were also written in JavaScript, and right now there's that whole move towards like, okay, could we use a faster language?